and welcome to the 15th Wemcast live session with me, Owen Walker, Wem Trauma Lead. So this session is titled Thriving versus Surviving. So it's a real honour today, actually. This session is really quite unique. So today we've got two guests who've gone through absolute life-changing injuries, but truly embodied through that process the spirit of thriving in the face of adversity. So in May 2009, Dan Richards lost his right arm and shoulder in a motorcycle accident. And in 2014, Victoria Lebrec lost her left leg under a lorry while cycling to work. Both have gone on to navigate the highs and lows of rehabilitation and adapting their lives for the better. So in this session, what I really wanted to do is get their organic story and then contrast that with a little bit of footage from the BBC, which was shown about both, but really get their highs and lows and some of the take-home messages from goal setting and some of the fantastic things that they've gone on to do. So these really are two truly inspirational accounts that testify that the human spirit can achieve anything despite the odds. So Dan and Victoria are with us today to unpack these stories. So welcome, guys. Dan, what I'd like to do is just, if I could just get a summary of your organic story, just a little bit of background on that day in May 2009, and then we'll play the video.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So basically to summarise, so I was brought up in a military family. I was kind of always around the military from a very, very young age. And it's actually, I was 8 years old when I told mum and dad, when I'm old enough, I'm gonna join the army and be just like dad. And that's exactly what I did. So I left to join the army shortly after I turned 17. Joined a regiment called the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery. So took part in all the various ceremonies of state troop in the colour, Queen's birthday parade, and so on. I had aspirations really to train as a farrier. I knew nothing about horses at the time, and the good thing with the military is you can know a lot about nothing, but training something can become really good at it. And so that was kind of my career aspirations, if you like. But for me personally, there were boxes that I wanted to tick before I settled down with that. Like for me, I couldn't justify being in the military, and even if only once, like never doing any sort of Green Army stuff. So I wanted to do an operational tour and some adventurous training. And so in 2007, I went off to Afghanistan, did just over 6 months there, came back and then spent 6.5 weeks, five or 6 weeks, trekking through Nepal and then up into the Trans-Himalaya, which is amazing. And then literally, I got back from Nepal in November 2008. And then in May 2009, I just finished doing a rehearsal for Troop in the Colour. It was a Saturday, the 30th of May. And then Sunday, the 31st of May, that's when we became friends, Owen. You flew out to me in your helicopter, I crashed my motorbike, riding back to my barracks. And the injury load was quite substantial, as you've told me. 2 bilateral talus fractures, radius and ulnar open fracture, and then all this. I amputated on site pretty much, and a partial laceration of my internal jugular. So,
wow. So a massive injury load, really, Dan. Massive injury load. So what I thought I'd do, just for everyone who's watching, I know these guys have seen this a million times, but just quickly play a video which really summarizes the injury load and just that snapshot of time, if that's okay. So I'm just going to play the video just to give people an idea.
King's Troop is I knew from a really early age, 8 years old, that I wanted to join the army, and I knew exactly where I wanted to be, where I was going. The King's Troop is a mounted regiment, and we take part in all the parades in London, so Troop in the Colour, Queen's birthday parade. I turn up on my first day, get my room, get most of my uniform issued to me, and then I get given a bugle. So you're going to be a trumpeter, Richards? I was like, cheers, nice one. I've had enough time blowing a whistle. Good luck getting anything out of this. Sunday, the 31st of May, was a normal Sunday routine in the troop. I got on my motorbike to go out and get something to eat. I was in the outside lane of a dual carriageway and I slammed my brakes on. I was thrown into the central reservation, shoulder first. The paramedic didn't think I'd survive the journey to hospital. He actually thought I would be dead in the road. I remember waking up and I thought I was back in my barracks. I remember looking over to the right side of my body, and where body should have been was the pillow. I was just thinking, what have I done to deserve this? So to help myself recover, I started setting myself little goals. For me, it was all about winning my independence back. I actually returned back to my regiment and I thought, I'm going to learn to ride a horse again. I became the first amputee rider in the King's Troop. I stayed in the army for 3 years. Over that time, I was watching the new people come in and I was watching them progress with their careers. And then I started to go, what have I really got to look forward to? I served my last day in the British Army in September 2012. I found the year out of the army worse than actually losing my arm itself. And I tried to end it all. I tried to end my own life. What stopped me was the thought of my mum finding me. And that's kind of when I said, right, I need help. And so the last 5 years, I've been rebuilding my life. June 2016, I took part in a big battlefield bike ride, 370 miles across northern France. The sense of achievement I got out of just doing that one ride, I was like, cycling's my thing. I'm going to be a cyclist. No hands! Woo! This journey that I'm on now with the Invictus Games is a massive privilege. Thousands of other people have applied for this, and I'm one of 72 that's got it. Losing my arm and shoulder is absolutely, unequivocally, the best thing that's ever happened to me. I've done more with my life like this than I ever would have done had it not happened. And the voice in your head telling you can't do something is a liar. You can do anything you want.
It's powerful, absolutely powerful, Dan. I think what we'll do as well is we'll really dig into some of those experiences in the Invictus Games in a short while, just to get your first-hand experience. But that was powerful. So Victoria, just turning to you. So would it be all right just to summarise a little bit around your experience building up to 2014 and then 2014 itself?
Yeah, of course. And also, Dan, I hadn't realised what you've been through so much, and that's so it's so amazing what you've done. And I think it's powerful that you were in a motorbike crash, and then I found cycling amazing for me before I had my crash, and it's just so nice to see you get back into cycling. So I just want to say that quickly before I start talking.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, it's really amazing, and just not to be patronising at all, but just well done. And I'm so happy that you found cycling as that kind of release and joy, because that's kind of what it used to give me. And I did it in a very different way, because I was 24 when I got run over, and I did it just as kind of commuting and just as a way to get around London, just to get to work really, and go to different places I needed to. But I did feel quite passionate about it, because it was somewhere something to to exercise properly, and you feel amazing and you feel very liberated when you're cycling, I think. So for me, I was cycling to work. It was December 2014. It was a very sunny day. It was a Monday morning, and I was going from East London towards my job in Farringdon, and it was only a 20-minute cycle. It was a very casual cycle, really, and I was about maybe 400 meters from my office, and was cycling to get over the junction, and then got run over by a lorry. And very, very difficult thing. And I think I'm generally considered a medical marvel because of what happened to me. If it had happened anywhere else in the country, or a few months earlier, I definitely wouldn't be alive. But very luckily, my life was saved.
Fantastic. Absolutely. And so what I thought I'd do now, Victoria, just to kind of shine a light on that and sharpen it up maybe for people who are watching this, is just to show a very similar, just three-minute clip, if that's okay.
With the accident, I was a normal 26-year-old. All of that changed after being run over. Forgiveness is really important, and I don't think it's helpful to, hold on to hate. It was 9 a.m, it was a sunny day, cycling to work, and I was coming up to a junction and a left-turning lorry knocked me over.
On the 8th of December 2014, Victoria Lebrec's life changed forever when her pelvis and left leg were crushed by an HGV.
Vicky? I know it is, and this is going to take all the pain away, okay? I know. So we're going to take that pain away for you, okay? We're going to look after you, don't worry.
Vicky was bleeding to death. Paramedics decided to perform a risky procedure at the roadside in a desperate attempt to save her life.
They put a balloon up your aorta, which is the main blood vessel in your body, to stop the bleeding. So it stops the bleeding to the lower half of your body to keep the rest of you alive. I was the second person which they managed to do it successfully out of hospital for, and ultimately it saved my life.
In hospital, Vicky had 13 surgeries and doctors had no option but to amputate her left leg.
Recovering from an accident like this, it takes a really long time. So after I left the rehabilitation hospital, I had to go back to live with my mum. It's just been quite a long and difficult process to get my life back together. Going from someone that's really active and is able to do everything and is completely independent and not reliant on anyone is very difficult and really life-changing. It's hard to describe what that's like, and I think until it's happened to you, it's difficult to understand.
A year after the accident, the case came to court. Vicky met the lorry driver for the very first time and made her amazing decision to forgive him.
When I met him, I didn't actually realise who he was exactly, but he kind of came up to me and apologised for what had happened, and then we had a really long hug, which was really nice. Ooh. Sorry. Ultimately, people make mistakes, and sometimes these mistakes don't have any consequences, and sometimes these mistakes have really awful, life-changing consequences. He had made this mistake which had these terrible consequences and was just clearly so sorry for what he'd done.
Vicky now meets other young trauma victims to help them during their recovery and campaigns for cycle safety. In 2014, over 21,000 cyclists were injured in accidents on Britain's roads. Of those, 113 people were killed. Vicky is determined that things should change.
It's a massive shame that cyclists keep having these really terrible accidents. Cycling is something that's really, really good for you, and a lot of these deaths are preventable. So anything that they can do in terms of segregating cycle routes and making the junctions safer, the longer they leave it, the more deaths and really serious accidents are going to happen.
Vicky continues to rebuild her own life step by step.
There's lots of little things that are still difficult. I think I take things a lot less for granted now. So, going from someone to being unable to move or get out of bed and then being able to start doing those things again and go back to work, I just feel really lucky that I'm able to do those things, and I feel grateful that I'm still alive. All the little things that can get you down or stress you out, it just makes you realise that they're not really important, and the important things are your health and your family and the people that you love.
That's incredible.
That's amazing. Yeah.
It's so funny to watch that back though, because it feels like that was like a good 3 years ago, and I feel like so much has changed. So it's just funny to watch it. I haven't seen that for so long.
Every time I watch that, Vicky, I'm like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. It's so moving. It really is quite moving. Okay,
just before you carry on there, I was watching Vicky's story there and see you do things with road safety and cycling. I'd love to get involved in that if I can, in any way I can. I cycle in London all the time, so.
Well, Dan, I was thinking when I was watching your thing, I was like, I need to get Dan involved with Ropies, which is where I work now. So there's going to be some conversations after this, I think.
Yeah, no worries, absolutely. Sorry, Owen.
Do a bit of a collaboration.
Yeah, I think a bit of collaboration is required. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, let's just the first question really I wanted to ask to both of you, maybe just because we've seen that video just then, Victoria, just maybe to you first. What were the first 6 months really like for you, just sort of from start to finish, really, after the injury?
Yeah, so they were very, very horrible. They were really bad. So the first 3 months, so basically, I got run over. I was in a coma for, I think it was like a good week, if not longer. And I had, the first memories I have like post collision are some like very aggressive, very troubling like hallucinations whilst I was in intensive care. And I think, like, thinking back on it now, I was trying to like rip out my like cannulas and things like that because I was hallucinating so much. And then I was like coming to a little bit in the high dependency unit and having like a bit more surgery on my knee and things like that. But I think it's difficult because people always think it's like, wow, like, did you wake up and like you realize your leg wasn't there? Like, how did you feel? And it doesn't feel that way at all. Like, you're so complete, they keep you so completely out of it. Because obviously, if they stop that, you'd be in so much pain. So you're very, very sedated. I had very amazing support networks. My family, in fact, was so worried about me waking up and like realizing my leg wasn't there. So they were kind of like constantly there and just checking that I was okay. So I have a lot of memories of like me hallucinating a lot, and also like my family being around me. And yeah, it was 2 and a bit months at the Royal London, and it was like a stay in intensive care, stay in high dependency unit, and then like quite a good long stay on the trauma ward, which was very difficult. I think there's photos of me like almost in intensive care where I look the same as I was before the collision, and then the photos of me from the trauma ward. I've lost so much weight and I look so unwell because I think my body was taking so long and like it was taking so much energy to recover from what had happened to me. And it just took so much energy. I had no appetite, and like I lost a lot of muscle mass, and like I had a lot of nerve injuries around my pelvis and in my legs as well. So my muscles were never going to be the same. So the photos of me kind of like in the trauma ward, I kind of looked like a baby bird, looked very weird. And then following that, so I was on the trauma ward, and then I'd had like 13 operations by that point or something. Obviously lost my leg. I had lots of like pelvic surgery. And then so the crash happened in December 2014. Like February 2015, I moved back to my mum's house. And that was also so difficult. Like, I remember the journey from the Royal London to going to my mum's house was so traumatic because it's kind of like I was in this new environment when all of this had happened to me, and I'd kept it within that environment, and then having to then like go back into London, and like I was living in Mile End before the crash happened, so I knew like the road that the Royal London was on quite well, and then to leave and then like be back on that road, and I was in so much pain still because my pelvis was had like loads of bars in it, and it was just like a metalwork really, and then had to be transported home, and that was so difficult in itself also to then be back in an environment that and you know how to transport yourself around it when you were able-bodied, to then come back into it like being carried into my mum's home with like a hospital bed in the dining room. Really intense and very difficult. And I was waiting. Essentially, the reason I got taken back to my mum's house is because I was waiting for a space at a rehabilitation hospital, and I think I was one of those cases, particularly because of the nerve damage around my hips. I think normally a through knee amputation, yes, it's very difficult and horrible, but if you've got your glutes, if you've got like your quads and like the abdo, whatever it is, the can't remember, I always forget them, the ones that like support your hips and support your inner thigh. Never remember. If you've got those
yeah, hip flexors?
No, hip flexors are at the front. Hip flexors at the front. It's the anyway, we'll pick it up after. But yeah, they weren't working properly around the left side. So I think I was like considered to be a bit of a kind of like more high need case, I guess. Yes, adductors. Thank you so much, Lucy Sanger. You're very correct. Yeah. Yeah, a bit more of a high need case. And very luckily, they were waiting for a space because Roehampton, that's like I think probably in terms of like civilian amputation, it's probably like one of the best ones in terms of like what rehab they can give you. And they've only got 15 inpatient beds for amputees, and unfortunately a lot of them are taken up by diabetics, so I think they've only got like 1 or 2 trauma beds. So yeah, so then was waiting for that at my mum's house, and then got admitted there 3 weeks later. And then that was also very difficult, because then it was kind of like being in a wheelchair, but you've got a broken pelvis, and it was so uncomfortable for me to be sat down. Like when I was at the Royal London, like most of the time that I was with nurses or physios was like just trying to get me sat up, and it was like horribly painful. It was so painful just being sat on like a pelvis that is utterly shattered, and I had bars that were under my skin, like holding my pelvis together to get it to heal properly. Like being sat on that, and when like a lot of your muscle mass has gone, so painful. And then going to the rehabilitation hospital, where maybe they don't have so much of like the understanding of like what's happened to you, and also being like, was lying down in bed for 3 months. Like, so like it'd be difficult for anyone if you've been like lying down in 3 beds and then going to Roehampton and doing 5 hours of physio every day. I remember like the first day I did it, I was just like completely horizontal in bed for 12 hours afterwards, like absolutely completely like shaken by that. I was there for nearly 3 months, and they got me walking, and like I think it got quite apparent to them, maybe not so much to me, but it was quite apparent to them that like I'd lost a lot of muscle mass, and my walking was going to be really impacted by that. But also,
you've actually got a video.
Show it.
Really quickly, show you a quick video of your rehabilitation.
Also, tell me if I'm talking too much. I feel like I might have been droning on. No. Here you go. Yeah, come on, I'm doing well. Here you go.
How do you stop it? Just press the button again.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I'm going to do for the back now.
You can see that, yeah, you're still catheterized, you're in pain, you know, you're learning to walk. Super.
So thin. Yeah, it's weird to watch that, because I look so thin, and like that. What that video was is before they make your leg, you obviously have to do like lots of physio exercises. But I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a kind of essentially a kind of like a peg leg, but it's got like a kind of inflated rubber thing around it, so you can adjust it for lots of people. And it's just like they just use it to like get you moving your leg forwards and back again. But yeah, that's a kind of like early thing, but really amazing. Like I remember the feeling of doing that after being like lying down or in a wheelchair for like 4 months. Like to be able to like stand up and like move your body was so good. Yeah, it was so nice.
Yeah. So Dan, your first 6 months, just from your recollections, if you could just go through those.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I've got no memory of the accident happening itself. I think the last vivid memory I got from that day was pulling away from the traffic lights and then waking up a few days later in hospital, but in the Royal London of all places. So, my earliest memory from waking up in hospital was I had no recollection of an accident whatsoever. I thought I was back back in my barracks, which was at St John's Wood at the time, and trying to get up out of bed to go and put my bike away, which I thought I'd left out. And Mum and Dad were in the room as well. And I remember opening my eyes and seeing them sort of stood above me. And they sort of told me that I ain't got a bike anymore. So I was adamant someone had pinched it. So, and then the doctor came in and said, you've been in a horrific motorcycle accident. And I got the injury load detail, the good news. You've got 2 bilateral talus fractures. This arm had fixators in it, suspended up a pole, and they said, your left arm's severely broken. And so that was that. And then I remember asking, my mum's told me this. I remember asking the doctor. I said, "Am I a vegetable? Am I gonna walk again?" And Mum said the doctor started to well up. So his registrar had to come in and then tell me all over again. And then just said, but unfortunately, after 6.5 hours of surgery, we were unable to save your right arm and shoulder. And as you saw in the video a minute ago, I remember looking over to my right side of my body, and where this should have been. This is prosthetic now, but where this should have been was the pillow, and I didn't have enough skin to cover the hole, so I had like a black piece of fabric sort of stapled to it with a little pipe sucking all the stuff, all the bad stuff out, all the grit and stuff I couldn't get out. I think that's the only time I've really been sort of like visually upset and actually upset about my situation. And I remember, and this is the first vivid memory I've got. I've never forgotten this. I remember everyone being a little bit sort of upset, as you would be. But and then I just went to the nurse and I said, is the plumbing still there and attached and working? So that's absolutely fine. I said, well, nothing else really matters, then, does it? It's people worse off than me. And, but looking back at that moment now, that's the moment I accepted my situation for what it was. I probably put a lot of that down to being in the military and having that mindset, I suppose, because one of the things that's really drummed into you, from the word go, from the minute you start basic training, is being self-reliant and relying on your own abilities to get yourself out of a situation, regardless of what the situation is. And so I suppose in that, making that joke, which got a few laughs, obviously, and which is what it was about, it gave me the sort of the mental freedom, if you like, to focus on basically getting to grips with this new life now of being a man with one arm. I was right-hand dominant, and that's been taken away from me. So in between visiting hours, I was learning to write. I was learning to do buttons up. At one point I had those black moon boots on over my cast. I don't know what they're called. And I'm sure there's people watching going, "Oh, moon boots." But I got a handyman came in to do some handyman bits, and he had a drill on him. I said, "You've got a drill and some string." He said, "What for?" I said, "I learned to start tying shoelaces." And my hand was in a cast anyway. I had the bones reset with some plates and whatnot. And so I just spent the hours in between visiting hours, because there's nothing else to do other than watch TV, learning to tie laces, learning to write, feed myself and stuff. Because up until that point, I was 23 years old when the accident happened. And, up until that point, everything was done, apart from holding a knife or a fork, everything was done right-handed. So it's very, I can't think of the word, frustrating, a lot of it was. But I think the first sort of major thought for me really was what's the future going to have in store for me? Because as far as I was concerned, I was in the military. That's everything I wanted to do from an 8-year-old boy. And I didn't know what else I could do, what else I wanted to do. So I made the decision that I'm going to go back to the army because that's what I know. That's where I feel I belong. That's where my identity is, you know, and my self-worth, if you like. And that was kind of my whole mindset, if you like. And the first goal I ever set was winning my independence back, and I did that from the Royal London Hospital. And that's where I started to learn to write, tie my shoelaces, just live independently without anyone having to do anything for me. And the whole reason behind that was I had to have an enema, and once I had it, I wheeled into the toilet like on this commode, and they said, when you're finished, just pull the orange cord. And I was like, no, I'm sorry, I don't want that. You know, if I can't wipe my own arse, then I need to work with myself. I spent an hour and a half in that bathroom, sort myself out. And I'm sorry for the colourful language, but and that was it. I was like, I need my independence back. And so everything, you know, all through hospital, and even up to now, even up to today, even though I live completely independently, my sole focus was just winning my independence back. And yeah, that's the first 6 months really was Headley Court, the Defence Medical Rehabilitation Centre. I went from I got moved from the Royal London. Home was in Swindon at the time. And so I got moved to the Great Western Hospital in Swindon, and then from there I went to Headley Court and just sort of learn to live life, you know, like I am now. And everything from, because I was completely wheelchair bound, all in all, non-weight bearing for about 6 months.
Really?
Yeah, because I had 2 broken ankles. So whilst they were healing, I couldn't stand up or anything, and one got reset with pins, which then came out because once I started partially weight bearing, my ankle locked and I fell over. And
how did you get yourself back up when you got?
I can't remember that much, but when basically it was the bolts, I think, was sort of poking out into the joint a little bit, and I said, right, let's get them out then. I'll do without those. So I had those taken out, and then for me, because I was going back to the army, in the military, it's you have like basic fitness tests, you know, 1.5 mile run, sit-ups and press-ups in 2 minutes. Well, I ain't going to be doing any press-ups for, you know, well, I can't anyway, even now, but I was like, I want to get my 1.5 mile run. I want to earn my spot back in the military. I don't just want to be, you know, just a malingerer. So I started learning to run again. So I used to lock myself into one of those where they just pump it full of air so you can offset your body weight. And so I just started getting back to running again, and it sort of helped with sort of walking and stuff. And yeah, so 6 months in rehab at Headley Court, and then I went back to the King's Troop in the December of the same year on the gradual return to work process. And that's when that's when I sort of went, right, well, I'm in a regiment with horses, and I was riding horses before. I was learning to ride a horse then, and so that's what I did. And then an opportunity came up shortly afterwards to rock climb, and so I took that. And I remember, whilst I was rock climbing, I became the lead climber of that expedition, and that adventurous training exercise thing. And I just remember my first thought was halfway that rock face in Spain, and I went, do you know what, if I can adapt to life like this as quickly as I have, I've got nothing to worry about. But you know, I'm not gonna ruin the rest of the story for
that's
anyone,
fine.
but,
That's fine. That's really honest and really helpful actually, and really intricate as well. So thanks, Dan. So just Jack Greer's just asked a quick question, and I'm going to ask it to you, Vicky, if that's okay. So did you experience, and then I'll ask it to Dan as well, did your experiences connect you with a community of people who've been through similar experiences, and did that help with your rehabilitation?
Yes, it did. Thank you. That's a very good question. I feel very lucky because I was saved ultimately by what the London Air Ambulance have done in terms of like advancements in medicine, and they did the resuscitative endovascular balloon occlusion of the aorta, which is what ultimately saved my life. But then more than that, like the kind of follow-up care, because it's ultimately their charity, even though they get their doctors from the NHS kind of on loan. It's a guy called Frank, who I think all of you should probably just like look up because it's so good. But he's their patient liaison nurse, and he is the most like emotionally intelligent and person that's so good at their job. And his job ultimately is to make patients' lives a bit easier after they've had a horrible traumatic injury. So it's kind of almost a kind of OT kind of role, but what he does is so much more than that, which is like for me in particular, it was putting me in touch with a guy called Andy who'd lost his leg like about 3 months before me. So he came to see me in hospital whilst I was still like completely, ultimately like paralyzed in bed. And Andy he was a police officer, he lost his leg in a crash. And he came to see me, and he'd just gone through his rehabilitation. So he was able to like talk to me about like what that process was like, what I could expect from it. We've stayed in touch since, actually, me and Andy. So yeah, that's a big part is, I think, is like introducing patients who've got things to learn from other patients. And I'm like so grateful now that Frank will introduce me to, and I've spoken to, lots of other amputee women, because sadly it happens all the time that women will lose their legs in London through a crash. I've spoken to quite a few women who that's happened to. So it's a very positive thing.
Yeah, fantastic. Dan, did you get reunited with any people going through the similar circumstances?
Do you know what I found? Like not until I went to Headley Court, really. I was meeting guys that had been, blown up and wounded on tour and so on. And I actually, do you know what? I didn't feel I belonged at Headley Court. I saw myself as inadequate amongst other amputees that had been injured on tour and whatnot. So I thought I was a bit of a fraud, to be honest. And that's it took a few guys actually that had lost like legs and so on, and sort of saying, no, that's you don't have that mindset. That's irrelevant. But I took a lot of inspiration, if you like, from other people that were there, going through the same situation as me, and it's quite shared experience. Is absolutely massive. Whether you're going through it at the same time, at the same level, or if you're further along than somebody else, and vice versa, I think shared experience is a powerful tool.
Dan, I need to get you like involved with my charity. Like that's what my charity.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely all about that. It's all about supporting people through shared experience.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're in a position to help somebody, and it's not always financial, it's anything. I think mental health is the most important thing above anything else. Mental robustness is the fundamental strongest ability anyone can have, before anything else. Because if you're not strong upstairs, then everything else doesn't matter.
But being not strong upstairs is kind of like that's some people either are like that or from what's happened to them, all of these things. And I think shared experience is just like the best way to make feel someone good about themselves. I think just knowing that someone else understands what you've been through, like regardless of whether like through a shared experience, hopefully, but even if their experience isn't that like especially relevant, it's just the most important.
I don't know about you, but one thing I have found is some people have for me a few times where I've done talks and stuff, and like someone shut their fingers in the door or something, and they go, "Oh, it's really bad," but nothing to what you've had to deal with. And it's like, I know my problem's no bigger or better than anybody else's. Just because we've lost limbs, it doesn't make somebody that's broken their leg or cut their fingers, chopping onions or whatever. It doesn't make our problems any different to anybody else. We've both had our own barriers to deal with. So I think they're relevant to it.
I think the biggest thing for me in terms of comparison is that there's lots of people that get killed in crashes, and I think sometimes it's a bit difficult to, like, as someone that's been seriously injured, if you're talking to like a parent who's lost someone, like as a kind of comparison in terms of like how you feel about what's happened to you, I think it's quite different. I think I feel very differently, for example, if like my sister got killed, I would not feel the same way about the driver. I would not feel the same way about the system. I think I would be perhaps more vengeful. So there's different approaches in that sense. I think in terms of like injury though, within that aspect, I think you're completely right. I think and it actually is really interesting when you start looking at like the definitions of serious injury, because it goes from like, broken neck and being completely paralyzed the rest of your life to breaking your finger actually qualifies as a serious injury. It's all within that bracket in terms of like how the stats describe it. But some things that, some injuries are different to different people, and actually, breaking your leg, if you haven't got a support network, that's a nightmare. You might end up homeless. Like lots of people actually, I think on our streets now are homeless because of like some kind of trauma that's then put them on the streets.
Yeah. So just changing tack slightly. Well, actually, just something you both mentioned there, because I'd like to ask you a question in a second, Victoria. Actually, but Dan, from your perspective, you mentioned navigating mental health. How was and we saw in the video some of the challenges, the mental health challenges you undertook. How did you navigate that? Because that was a bit of a roller coaster, was it not?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, mine was kind of my mental health issues, if you like, didn't sort of come to anything until about 3 years later when I was discharged from the military, and I had my entire identity kind of removed from underneath me, and any ounce of self-worth that I had was gone, and I found the readjustment from military life to civilian life impossible to deal with. And I spent a whole year trying to find a job, 327 job applications, and not so much as an interview or anything, any networking opportunity from that. And running parallel with that, financially, it's ruined me. And that's what led to me going, what I really got to look forward to, and is, I've been through enough, and I've dealt with it the best way I can, the best way I know how, and that for me was my rock bottom, became the foundations of which I've rebuilt my life, from scratch. And I suppose in a way, goal setting is my strongest tool in my arsenal, really. A lot of people have asked me, how did I deal with that? And I was like, I just set goals, and those goals, breaking them down into small achievable wins, have been fundamentally life-changing for me. And from my room that day that I tried to end it all, I started to go back to London, because I'd moved back home to Somerset after I'd left the army, and lived essentially in my old room. 27 years old, living like a 16-year-old child out of school, got nothing to show for the 10 years I had in the army, and I had nothing to move on to, or couldn't find anything to move on to, not through want of trying. I was like, I need to go back to London. How the hell am I going to go back to London? And so I lived, it was just an exercise of navigating goals. This is what I want to do. Okay, what do I need to do to achieve that? And so that's the goal there, and I've worked backwards. Right, well, I'll do that and that. There's little wins there, and the little wins kind of, they boost you a lot. And like I said a minute ago, my rock bottom became the foundations of which I've rebuilt, the house which has become my life. And That was it. I think I got offered a job as a chauffeur with a company in London, driving the rich and famous, and hired help for the palaces at one point, and for the Royal Mews. And I remember I was in these people's personal space, and more so than some of their families and stuff. And I was like, what gives these people they get up and go? What makes them tick? And I just became a sponge. I was like, you know what? I'm going to just fake it till you make it, sort of thing. And so I used to cherry pick attributes from different clients I had in the car, regardless of what they were. But the life I was living, on the outside of that job, I was living in a caravan, in a field, in someone's back garden, big enough to be a field. And the only luxury of that caravan was it was plumbed. I could flush the toilet and stuff, and but it was home. Do you know what I mean? It was so I could go to sleep at night, and so on. And I just decided one day, back in 2014, I think it was. I said, any opportunity I get, I don't care what it is. I'm just gonna take it, just say yes. And so during those years, I qualified as a scuba diver in Egypt, with a military charity called Depth Therapy, and sort of qualified as a PADI scuba diver. And then I learned to fly a plane not long afterwards. And then I spent the whole of 2015 training to become part of a 4-man crew to row unsupported across the Atlantic Ocean. I didn't get selected, but
wow.
I made the final
That's
five.
amazing.
Yeah,
I didn't know you did that. That's mental.
Why not? Yeah,
it's amazing.
But it was great. But that's become my greatest achievement. Even today, regardless of whatever I achieve, in the future, that row, the selection process, and not getting selected has become my greatest achievement, because I learned more about myself and what I'm actually capable of when I put my mind to something than I ever have. Certainly in the 10 years I was in the army, and certainly the time afterwards. But and that's from that, when I got told you haven't been selected, thanks Lucy, and that's how I got into cycling. Rather than look at it as a negative thing. And I mean, there are plenty of people telling me, "What's the point, Dan? You'll never get it." Maybe they are right, but my attitude.
Oh my God, they're not right.
No, but my attitude really was, well, this is what I'm doing in my life. What are you doing yours is so fantastic. Come on, let me know. And funnily enough, no one could answer it. No one gave me an answer. So
I've got some really good challenges that you can do, by the way, with Row Peace. We do some amazing different rides, and it's with families that have been bereaved with road crashes, all of this stuff. Need to get you. This is
definitely,
excited. Yeah, it'd be so good.
Things plans, but do you know what? And after I got the news about the row, I was like, well, I need some else. I've got a bike, right? I'm gonna get into cycling, and so cycling became something I trained myself to do. I couldn't afford a coach or anything, so I just used the internet and researched everything from nutrition to training, and then it's no surprise, there's no spoiler alerts now, but I got selected to compete in the Invictus Games 2018, which was a 2-year goal. And if it wasn't for COVID, I'd be in America right now doing the race across America, but doing that next year. So,
so Dan, that's fantastic. Just the point you're making there, which is a superb one, around small incremental goal setting to becoming bigger goal setting, but just small wins aggregated over days and days to become bigger wins, and to the point where, like you say, you're trialing for a row across the Atlantic, or you're trialing for the Invictus Games, but it starts with the small things and ends up with the big things. But the power of goal setting and having that focus is absolutely key. But just to pan slightly, and before we move on, Victoria, your mental challenges were sort of slightly different. And in that video, just talking about sort of the power of forgiveness and forgiving him to release you, would you mind just talking a little bit about around that?
Yeah, of course. I think it's actually so interesting to hear from Dan just then about talking about like goal setting and like having goals, and I feel like for me, I mean, maybe it's the opposite, where it's more of a kind of like daily goal thing, perhaps. But like at the beginning, I think like the thing that helped me so much, and I think the thing that helped me with like the forgiveness was more, like just feeling so relaxed about everything. And I think like for me, I just was like, the bit in terms of my mental health, the bit that was hardest was leaving the rehabilitation like hospital setting like 6 months in, and then having to then adapt to life like with 2 walking sticks, like walking really badly, like falling over like every few steps. Like that's what was hard for me. But I think yeah, I didn't do so much like goal setting and stuff. I guess I wanted to get back to work. I wanted to get back to living in London. Like those were the main things. But yeah, the kind of goal setting I didn't do like to this, yeah, to that extent. I think it's so good that you did that, because I think it probably would have been helpful for me, but I think it was almost helpful for me to not do it.
Yeah. So so just before we move on, Lucy just asked, did you have any ongoing community rehab? So did you have any rehab in the community?
Yeah, I did. So so 6 months. So after my crash, 6 months after that, I moved back to my mum's house, and that's when I finished my inpatient rehab. Moved back to my mum's house, and I got given some like hydrotherapy at the local hydrotherapy pool, and I had like a good 10 sessions, and also like the physio there was amazing. She like does like conferences and like things like that, and she was like super good. But the problem is it's the NHS, and unless it's like you doing hydrotherapy after your knee replacement and you've got like specific like goals that you're going to reach, like, whereas for me it was more like, for me it's more of a kind of like maintenance thing, and like swimming and keeping fit is for me just like making sure my body keeps working. I mean, I feel like I kind of qualify still for hydrotherapy on the NHS, but ultimately they would just have to keep giving me sessions like every day of the week. So it stopped after like a couple of months.
So Victoria, you mentioned swimming actually, and you mentioned goal setting. So you did, we're going to come on to Dan's achievements in a second, but you last year, if I'm right in saying this, swam the Channel.
As part of a team effort,
but still, I would never be able to do. So just walk us through that challenge, because that's a phenomenal thing.
Well, it was September last year, and it was to raise money for London's air ambulance. And like, I actually can't remember like how the idea came about, but I think it was like the year like earlier that year, or possibly late the year before, like kind of late 2018. The year was like, yes, like we're thinking of maybe doing some kind of like channel swim kind of thing. Like Bill's mentioned it, and Bill is one of the paramedics that was there the day that I got run over and saved my life, essentially. I was like, yeah, I guess I'd be up for that. I'd be doing like a bit of swimming, where it was kind of like, I've been doing like a bit of swimming, like nothing like channel swim ready swimming. So I kind of like agreed to sign up to it, and then like spent like last year, like early, so we're kind of like, yes, like everyone, like we had like a group of us, there were 12 of us doing it, and you have 6 people per boat, so you have like 2 teams and there's 6 people per team, and the plan is that you take an hour swimming, and then the next person swaps in like per team. So we had like our training goals, and like we had things to do, and then in like June last year, like 3 months before the swim, we were going to Dover and like doing some like proper like practices. And actually Dover's quite intense, like really quite intense. Like I went like for day, like the kind of like practice swim, and then I went for the day that was the kind of because you have to qualify to do the channel swim, so you have to do I think an hour and a half. If you're doing the relay, you have to do an hour and a half swim in below 16-degree water all in one go. which doesn't sound like that much, but actually, like, it is so intense. Like, it's so cold. And also, it was like an unusually, I think, like, choppy day. So I was like, there was points actually where we had to like swim between these two poles that were like parallel with the beach, and I was swimming and I was just like staying still because I was like swimming against the tide. But yeah, no, it was it was amazing. It was I wouldn't do it again in a hurry. It was like a very intense experience for me. I think the main thing is that we did it in September. We started at midnight because it got delayed. We were meant to do it earlier that week, and then it got delayed because of some hurricanes in the States. And then we had to postpone it to like a day after that we said we were going to do it. And we ended up starting at midnight, which meant getting to Dover at 10 p.m. and then lots of faffing around that. Midnight, the first swimmer goes, which is the strongest swimmer in the team. And then I went at 5 a.m. after having like sat up all night, like fretting. And then, it was not good. I had my first swim was like essentially just like hyperventilating in seawater. Then came back off, like sat on the boat for a bit, had like a cup of tea and some biscuits and things like that, and then had a little sleep. Then I did the second one. It was like quite sunny and it was really nice, and I'd calmed down a bit by then. I think the first one was just like way too much pressure. Like I was just feeling so stressed. Also, I was watching like all these grown men that have come out the water who do ultra marathons like in their spare time as like hobbies, like almost crying. Like they were almost crying, and I was just like watching them come out like I've got to go in now. So it was a bit stressful. But then the second swim, that was around 11 a.m. was so good, and it kind of felt like that's how I wanted to do the channel swim. So I felt really felt like I'd redeemed myself, and I felt really lucky also that I've been able to do it with Bill. He'd saved my life in 2014. Like it was so special to do it together, and also we were like on the same team, but both by far the worst swimmers. Like he's not good, I'm not good either.
You made it, which is the main thing. Which is
that's the main thing.
Yeah, literally, it's like that's all that matters. That you made it.
Absolutely,
we did make it.
So just looking at Facebook Live, Emily Payne was just saying she thinks that goal setting is the difference between NHS and military rehab. But so Dan, from your perspective, what did you learn through some of your failures? Because like I said, it hasn't always been success. And I think everyone who pushes themselves into some of these amazing goals has to taste failure. What have you learned about yourself through failure?
What have I learned through failure? That every single situation you face, there's always something to be learned. So regardless of the outcome, whether it's a negative outcome or not, there's always something to learn and apply to, to whatever you do, however you do it next time. So I suppose focus on the things that you can control rather than what you can't. So that's actually a fundamental thing I do all the time anyway. So certainly with the situations going on at the minute, everyone's in the same boat, but I can't control what's going on. So what I can't control isn't really worth the mental capacity of worrying about it. And I think through failure, trying to achieve something or to achieve a goal. You know what I mean? If somebody tells you this is the only way to do it, well, it's not. There's that quote by I can't remember what it is about the guy that designed the light bulb.
Edward thingy.
Yeah, and this is why it took you 1,000 times.
Wait, don't put that into the final recording.
It's already out there now. It's already out there.
I'm just going to quickly Google.
Might be
but
wrong.
It turned around and said, "I just found 1,000 ways of how not to do it." So
yeah, indeed, absolutely. So Dan, just sort of focusing in slightly on the Invictus Games, because that was an amazing experience. And just getting your perspective. Just before we do, I'm just going to play a little video from the Invictus Games, just to show everyone.
Edison.
Thomas Edison.
Hold your nose and swallow, yeah.
Fritz and sauce. Here goes.
Oh, yeah.
I know I was right, it was dog food.
That's quite nice, that.
Oh no, it's got an aftertaste.
I can taste the bum hole. Is there some lips and eyelids in there?
What, sorry?
That's amazing.
It's good to know that our Team UK are enjoying a salty Golden Gay time.
Salty gay time.
I hope it hasn't got something else in it.
I'd like another gay time, actually.
Oh, you have actually got a little bit of gay time in your beard.
They smell a little bit sock-like.
That's nice, that is.
I think it'll be the first and last time I eat chicken crimpy.
My mouth's so dry and my lips start to stick to my teeth. Beef rings.
Beef hoops, I'm going to say.
Beef holes.
I should really grow up. Looks like a brown suppository.
I think it's soap, shower gel.
Clinker, I'll do it in there.
I love a clinker.
No thanks. It's rats.
I like it.
Get that down your neck.
Oh, Tim.
This is what I want my gold medal in.
Oh, no.
Oh, what?
You got an endo? Wow, good.
Oh, I love that video. I love that video so much, so much. Oh, that's fantastic. Dan, how was it in the Invictus Games 2018? Just describe the experience.
Do you know what? I think because I spent 2 years, it was a 2-year thing that was to get that. And that's in the video, you know, they could only take 72 people and I think 4,000 people applied for it. So I think just that sort of responsibility in itself, knowing that I was able to go and compete and represent my country on an international platform. But it's an amazing way to see, well, Sydney anyway. It was an amazing experience to be part of. And I remember actually getting the phone call to say, you know, congratulations, you know, you've been selected. It was an email, sorry. You've been selected for to represent Team UK at the Invictus Games, and it never really hit me until the day of the official team announcement. We got off the coach onto Horse Guards Parade, and it was May 2018. And I got out, and it hit me all at once, and I got a little bit like nostalgic, a little bit teary-eyed, if you like, because the last time I was really on Horse Guards Parade, you know, for something, was the day before my accident happened, the day before I lost my arm, and I'd always said that the Invictus Games for me is going to be that's my line in the sand, if you like. That's me shutting a door on that part of my life and focusing on the rest of it, because as cliche as it sounds, you've got to look at your life as a story. You can't move on to the next chapter if you're still rewriting and rereading the previous one. And I got that sort of thing really from, of all things, watching Only Fools and Horses. I said, I don't want to be an Uncle Albert. I don't want every story I ever tell. I don't want to be just known as Dan who was once in the military, or every story I ever tell, you know, during the army or during this. Whilst I've had some amazing experiences and the military has contributed a massive part, you know, to my life, it doesn't contribute to it anymore. It doesn't, you know, I'm not paid by the military anymore. It doesn't do anything for me other than having stories and stuff. And, you know, I don't want to go through life as being just somebody that was once in the military. And it's, you know, there's a lot more to me. I've got a lot more to offer the world than that. At the same time, I'm not like turning my back on it or ignoring it at all. But yeah, it was a very humbling experience that day of the announcement. And I think, do you know what? There's nothing more fulfilling in life than achieving a goal that you've actually set out for, but at the same time running parallel with that. And as you know, let's use the row as an example here. Even though I didn't get selected for the row, I tried my absolute hardest, and I committed 110% to that. And that's why it's my greatest achievement, because I never gave up. And even if you don't get selected for something that's out of your control, at least you can hold your head high and say, well, I tried my best.
That's so healthy. I just feel like I'm just in awe of you. It's so good. Like, it's amazing.
I'm in awe of your swim. I can't swim in a paddling pool, to be honest. So, yeah, that's an amazing thing.
It's so good.
The channel was an amazing thing. An amazing thing. So my experience of the games was one of being utterly humbled, massive achievement, and just I suppose in not every ounce of the phrase, but a weight off of my shoulder. But yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. Brilliant. I didn't win any medals there, but that's not why I went to do it. And that's not what the games are about anyway. It's all part of people's individual recovery stories. And the Invictus Games, I suppose, I used as kind of the end of my recovery. You never finish a recovery journey. Do you know what I mean? You're always recovering. But I suppose I want to be in a position now where I'm in a position to give back. I've had a lot of help from military organised charities and stuff, and I think I want to give back.
I'm going to rope you into my stuff. You want to give back? We'll chat later.
Yeah.
So let's do that. Let's focus on what you guys are doing now, because I find it absolutely fascinating to what you guys are actually doing at the moment. And so, Victoria, what are you involved with at the moment? What's your current line of work?
So I started working. It was funny because I got run over. I was obviously in hospital for ages. I used to work in advertising, like when I got run over, and then I went back to that job, and they were amazing. Like they were so, like I feel like it was a family. They did go under, and I think perhaps they were like too nice. But I'm in touch with so many of those people still, and they were fantastic. And I got a job working at a bank, which was still when I had like not a very good leg, and I think that was me like pushing myself. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna work full time. Yes, I've lost my leg. Yes, I've got all these like horrible other injuries, but I'm gonna do it. And actually, it was too much and too hard for me. But at the same time I was doing that, I was campaigning the road that I had my crash on. There'd been a woman who was killed like a few years before. There'd been another woman that like had been seriously injured, and like that was at the junction, a bit of a stretch of road. Since my crash happened, in fact, there had been 2 women that had lost their legs on that same stretch of road, and it was like, what is going on here? Like, this is just not okay. Why are like these lovely women losing their legs on this stretch of road? And it's only because of like the air ambulance and like the capability of the NHS that they're still alive. Like, we should all be dead, really. So I got like more involved in campaigning, and I joined. I did a few speeches, like when some other cyclists had been killed at some different protests, like from like 2016 onwards. And I met at one that was in Kensington and Chelsea, this woman who was pregnant that had been killed on the bridge. So horrible, like this lovely teacher. And I met Cynthia, who is the chairperson of the charity Ropies that I now work for. But she, her daughter Alex was killed near London Wall. I think it was in 2007, or 2007. And got killed by a lorry, and she had to like fight so hard. Like, she had to pay for like the police like reports. she is like such a transformer and like such a proper individual campaigner. Like she's changed so much in terms of like how lorries operate in London, because she like bought shares in the company that ran her daughter over, and she spoke at their annual meeting and was like, this is what's happened and you need to like sort yourself out, because you're killing people on the roads. Like you're not like taking this seriously, you're thinking about this in terms of money, and you're not understanding the impact you're having, and you're not prioritizing road safety. So she's done so much. But I met her at this speech, and started doing a bit of freelance work for Road Peace, and then as of 2 years ago was employed working on a project, and now I'm their like head of like campaigns and communication and policy, like all that stuff. So I'm like Mrs. Road Safety essentially.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So no, it's really good, and it's an amazing charity. Like it's been around for, like the reason it started was in 1992 because a woman called Brigitte Chowdhury, her son, a motorcycle crash actually also, got killed when a driver just went through a red light. And this was before the death by careless driving charge existed. So there was nothing really to charge that driver on. And I think he just got like a fine, and like just nothing else happened to him. And it's like the charity that I work for now, at like Road Peace, they just like focus quite a lot on like what happens after a crash. Like what is the justice system going to do to you? Like what like penalties are going to be involved? Like all of that stuff. Like what support you can get from the police, all of those things. And I think I'm quite inspired by all of that. I think I had a fantastic experience with the police. They were like amazing for me. But then there actually were, looking back, some things that are typical, which is where originally the driver was charged with causing serious injury by dangerous driving. Like there was enough evidence for it to be that, because he was doing like so much stupid stuff. But then it was like, okay, the defense think that actually they'll accept the guilty plea for careless driving. We'll go with that. And it's like, okay, well, I don't really know, so we'll do that. And this happens all the time. And there's so many issues with the justice system. And that is what contributes to not enough being done about preventing the crashes in the first place. Like it's all so interlinked. And I think there's not that much connect actually. Like even what we're doing now, like we're talking about like trauma and experiences, but it's all completely interlinked. Like what are people's experiences when a crash happens and they've survived and they're trying to get justice? What happens then? And like the worst thing is bereaved families. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. I've spoken to like a couple today, in fact, and like one of them, like sister killed in a crash. The driver got a 10-year driving ban, which actually is a bit unusual because it's quite long. Now he's appealing it. They're going to protest, like all of this stuff. It's just, yeah, it's very sickening. I think we're in like, Dan, you'll agree, like we're in like a weird place where it's like, oh, it's an accident. It was bound to happen. Like nothing could have been done to prevent it. That's not how you think about it.
No.
And, you know, it's a crash. It's something that could have been prevented. It's because society is not dealing with it seriously.
I think you're right that the justice system, for the most part, is a little bit of a joke. Certainly where...
What happened with yours, if you don't mind me asking?
I have no idea.
Well, that's ridiculous in itself.
All I know is I was in the outside lane of the dual carriageway.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon? Oh, so my girlfriend's just come home. I was in the outside lane of a dual carriageway and I slammed my brakes and go around the corner. I don't know why, don't know what happened. Yeah, but there's no cameras on that stretch of road at all whatsoever. So it was kind of just really...
No, it's a lack of investigation. And that's like a serious issue in itself, which is that like if it was a grievous bodily harm or something like that, it would be investigated properly. Whereas I think there's so many people that we speak to that have been like horribly injured, and unless it falls into the kind of like the bit of the police which investigates traffic collisions, which is fatal, or like mine where they think you're going to die, if it falls out of that and you might be like horribly injured, they don't investigate it properly. Like, they just don't.
It's really powerful work, actually, Victoria, I think. And like you said, yeah. I think you need some really strong advocates like yourself to really continue the narrative, not just the narrative, but just the truth seeking, and just make sure that people get not only justice, but also they get, the families get a due course of justice. Absolutely.
Yeah, and support also. The other thing is just like, it's just being like kept up to date with like what's happening with the police, and it's also being like redirected to people that can actually support you. Like, I feel so blessed. Like, I had like London's Air Ambulance, like Frank, and then I had my family who were like just amazing, and my work were also amazing. Most people don't have that. I'm very well aware that most people don't have that. So there needs to be like proper signposting when something like this happens to get people the support that they need.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. So Dan, what do you find yourself doing these days? What's your line of work?
Jack of all trades and master of them all. Yeah. So I work full time in project management for local government, and sort of in a support element, which I quite like doing. I don't think I want to be a project manager, but running parallel with that, on the other side of that, is when I took up cycling, I decided to jump on social media and sort of track my progress through Instagram. And whilst I was doing that, I got contacted by a modelling agency, and long story short, they offered me a contract, and that's what I started doing. And I did, my first job was a Lloyds Bank and mental health awareness advert back in 2018. And off the back of that, literally, I got asked to go and meet a television production company. And that became a TV series called Naked Beach on Channel 4. That is all about body confidence and helping people with a very low opinion of themselves accept themselves for who they are, and not comparable to, what sort of plastered all over media and all these perfect airbrush images. And that's what I did, and I got back from doing that. I took a year off of work. I was made redundant from my project management role at the time, so I just took a year off of a full-time commitment and to just throw myself into sort of doing that. And then I started back in that year, finished in September last year. And yeah, I'm in project management full-time now. And obviously with COVID-19 as it is, the modelling and media has kind of stopped because you can't really do it socially distanced. So yeah, it's quite good. It's I just found that I really enjoy being in a creative environment, and I like having the divide. Do you know what I mean? So not a lot of people in the office where I work know what I do when I'm not in the office. So it's very much I don't know, it sounds a bit strange to say, but Batman and Bruce Wayne sort of thing. So we do now. So yeah, it's quite good. I just really, I love being in a creative environment. I love being sort of with people, but not having to worry about toning it down, if you like. So yeah.
So Dan, my next question to you really would be, if anyone was watching this, going through a similar circumstance, retrospectively, or indeed even now, what would your words to them be if they were undergoing some rehabilitation from a life-changing injury? What words of encouragement might you want to give them?
Words of encouragement. Don't look at this as just a negative situation. Do you know what I mean? There are things to be learned in every. I said earlier, didn't I? There's things to be learned in every situation we find ourselves in. Talk, like really reach out and talk, regardless of who it is. It'll make you feel a whole lot better. And rather than bottling it up, you bottle it up. It's like a bottle of Coke that you shake it enough times and it'll blow off. I suppose really figure out like who you want to be. The thing with certainly as far as amputations go, it's a very any traumatic injury as far as they go, it's going to change your life. Like how your life was before is not going to be the same. You can try and hold on to it if you like, but I think you've got to accept that it's a fork in the road, if you like. So just figure out who you really want to be, like not like what you want to do with a job or anything, but who you want to be as a person, and just go for it. People will tell you not to do it or you shouldn't do it or whatnot. Just don't listen to them, like literally, unless they've been through it and they've done it all perfectly. No one's done anything perfectly. Just ignore them. And yeah, I suppose take every opportunity that's presented to you, even like literally, even if you don't know how to do it, like just say yes. And then just the internet's a wonderful place of learning everything you need to know about. Like just learn the basics of something. Learn the basics is all you really need. I suppose the final bit of advice I'd probably give is, and everyone does this, I used to do it, I'm sure people listening have done it as well, is don't compare yourself to other people. Like literally no one. It will kill any joy or any wins that you've made. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
that's powerful, Dan.
Yeah.
That's powerful, mate. It really is powerful. So just a few final questions before we wrap up. So Louise just asked on Facebook Live, Victoria, from a medical and nursing point of view, is there anything that could have made your experience less difficult in hospital?
That's so nice to ask. I had actually the most amazing experience in hospital. I think I was just in so much pain, and it was so I was so unwell. So it's hard to kind of like describe what would have made that better. I think there's two things. In terms of intensive care, when I was hallucinating horribly, and it was like I actually think about it still now, and it's actually like trauma support groups, I think, on the issue. I think an understanding that person that you're dealing with is hallucinating horribly, and the only thing that made me feel better was when I was convinced that like the man opposite me was trying to kill me. My dad was like, "Don't worry, we're gonna take care of it," and I was like, "Okay." And then like that made me feel so much better. So I think like from that perspective, just like go along a little bit with the hallucination and just say that you've got it in hand, I think is like one bit of advice. And then the second thing, the only bad nurse that I had was the one when I just moved to the trauma ward, and she'd been, I think she was maybe like a little bit disenfranchised with the whole thing and uninspired by nursing. I think she'd been doing it a long time, and maybe you know she'd seen it all before. But I was moved into a private room, and my family put up lots of like pictures and like cards from people that had well wishers, for example. And she was kind of like, well, the blue tack is going to be a problem, so like take it down. And also they put me on a bed that was like one of those inflatable mattress things, and like at one point I was kind of like sunk into it like this, and I was like, Dad, I think there's something wrong with the bed, like it really hurts, like my whole upper back hurts. And it turns out it was very deflated, but like oh, I'm sorry, I'm echoing. The whole back was like very deflated, but it took quite a lot of like arguing to like get that sorted out. And I think I think the only thing is just to like listen to your patients. I think if they're hallucinating, go along with it. If they're compos mentis and they're saying the mattress is failing them, don't believe them. Dan, I'm so sorry. I think your thing or whoever's like unmuted might be causing some feedback.
Yeah, we're getting a bit of feedback there. I'm not entirely sure where that's coming from. Whether it's
you can mute everyone on your thing.
There we go. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I think so. So it's just gone 7:30. It's been fantastic just to speak with you both actually, and just get your individual perspectives. And I really feel like just getting that personal narrative from you both is just really powerful. So just as we finish off, I got sort of Dan's perspectives earlier, Victoria, around what he would say to someone going through a very similar situation. Just from your perspective, is there any sort of words of encouragement and or insight? I know you talked about forgiveness earlier, and that struck me as being really powerful. But any thoughts final thoughts from you?
Well, it's very difficult. I think everyone's really different. I think okay, I think the main thing I wish I'd done this a bit more myself, but just to reach out to other people, and whether it's like your family and friends to talk about how you're feeling, or to talk, with there's lots of, depending on like what trauma you've been through, if it's like a head injury, or if it's a spinal injury, if it's a road crash or whatever, there's lots of help available, and I think I'm so sorry. I was muted throughout that whole time. Should I start again?
It's fine. That's fine. I think it's just a little bit of a microphone issue, but that's
it was me. It was me muted.
No, it's fine.
Yeah. Okay, I went on a rant there, but I'll start it again. I think the most important thing is to like reach out for help, and whether that's like through your family and friends, or depending on like what type of trauma you've had, whatever it is. There are I didn't realize this until like quite recently, but there's so many organizations that exist to help with different types of trauma. So like if you've had a brain injury, there's so many places that you can access help from. Spinal cord injury, same thing. Amputation, like specific stuff to do with road crashes, which is where I work. Like there's so many like different types of organizations that you can access help from. And I think the main thing is to seek help from them. I feel lucky that I didn't suffer with any like post-traumatic stress or anything like that. But of course I found it difficult. But yeah, I think just reach out and like do a bit of Googling, I think. If you're in a space where you're like not too sure, like just Google your injury. There's loads of things that come up, is what I would suggest.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely what you're saying there actually about reaching out for help. What I've found actually is, and as harsh as it might sound, it's not meant at all, but you can't help anyone that doesn't want to be helped.
Yeah.
So it's all well and good having the help there, but if the person's not willing or not in a frame of mind yet to admit they need help, it's kind of like knocking on the door with nobody at home. Do you know what I mean, sort of thing? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think we're in a little bit of an issue with sound just in this final 5 minutes, which is just a bit of a shame. I think we're just getting a bit of feedback, which is a little bit unfortunate. But I think what we'll do is we will leave it there, which is fantastic. I know we've been going for an hour and a half, but I just wanted to, from the bottom of my heart, just thank both of you really, because I know we've spoken both at the World Extreme Medicine Conference in years gone past, but as together with the people who've been listening and watching this, the organic story you guys both tell, and just the honesty and transparency, it just really, I think really is just both touching to me and everyone listening to it. So my thanks to both of you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having. Thank you, Owen.
Thanks for having us.
Listen, pleasure, absolute pleasure. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much. So guys, just before you leave, just bear in mind we've got the 16th Wemcast live event this Friday at 7:30 with Will Duffin. He's going to be speaking to Anna McNuff. Anna McNuff is an amazing adventurer. She's also got lots of tips and tricks about how to add adventure into your life. She's a lively character, wonderful guest. I've heard her speak before. Please do tune in. It's another free session this Friday at 7:30 for the 16th Wemcast live event. So do tune in to Facebook and/or Zoom. And you can find the links on social media. Please do share your feedback for this session, both on our social media page, and if you're on Zoom, there should be a survey monkey just pop up after you leave the room. But please do leave feedback, because we're always interested in getting better. But again, my thanks to the guests. They're both superb speakers and absolute legends. So thank you guys.
Oh, thanks, Erin. Bye.
Thanks, Joey. Thanks a lot. Nice to meet you, Victoria.
Yeah, likewise.